Welcome back to the Messy Success Podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Henson. I have such a unique, out of our normal realm guest for you guys today. My friend from college, Jason Bryant, also known as Twinkie, is here to share with you guys just lots of stories and energy. He is a professional broadcaster. But before I get into it, I want to dedicate this episode to our dear friend, Dennis Whitby, who passed away recently. And this is the reason that not just Jason and I were reconnected, but a ton of us that were college athletes at Old Dominion University, which you'll notice Jason doesn't like to say the name, but I was a college athlete. I played field hockey at ODU, and all the athletes knew each other, right? Like, this was a very large commuter school. So pretty much if you lived on campus, you were an athlete and you knew all the other athletes. We were a family. And Dennis, who passed away about a month ago, a little bit over, was like, an iconic part of that experience. And he's embedded in my memories of the ODU wrestling team. And it was so tragic. But I know that he would be shining down and so happy with all the connections that were, reignited, like all the athletes that were brought back together. His memorial celebration of life was huge, and people traveled from all over the country. I mean, Jason, that you're going to hear from, came from Minnesota. People traveled from all over, and we just got to re-experience a night that was like our college days. And it was really special. And one of the things that made it so different and so special was that when we were in college, social media was not a thing. And I'm not Facebook friends with all of my college friends because Facebook wasn't around. And then by the time social media really, got into the forefront of all of our lives, we had moved on from that stage. And it was either kind of awkward to friend people, or I just haven't found them. You don't forget people, but you forget people. And to have everyone together again and then have this opportunity to connect online with people who would hands down be connected to me on social media, if social media was a thing then, was so awesome. And of course, Jason, Twinkie, I could not wait to see him, because we actually had found each other on social media, but I didn't spend a lot of time really seeing what he was up to. And I just knew he was one of those people because he was an icon. He was a part of a fixture of campus. You're going to hear so many stories, but it was just so incredible to reconnect with him and to reconnect with so many friends. And 10 minutes into our conversation, I'm like, I got to have you on the podcast. I listened to a snippet of what you're up to, and I got to bring you on the podcast. So Jason is here. He is a broadcaster. You're going to hear a lot of wrestling talk, and he goes down some pretty deep rabbit holes. But stay with us. And the most important part of all of this is that Jason is a shining example of messy success, right? And he's really found himself in this place where, he gets to be known for his ability to broadcast and his ability to use his voice. And now that I'm in a place where I can recognize a really great speaker, a really great voice when I hear one, I just know there's big things ahead for him. And I just am super pumped to share his journey with you guys, so you can hear his voice and hear the ups and the downs of his journey. And what I think is the most exciting is just dreaming up what's next, right? So let's get started. right, Jason, how are you? I'm so excited to have you here today. This is such a special treat.
I don't know if I'm reverse jet lagged or not. I'm not quite sure because it's bad on the way there. On the way back, I don't have I don't have time because I got to get the kids on the bus. I got to get lunches made, and then we start the work day. So I'm trying to do everything I can to keep this week kind of low key after a very busy 26 days on the road.
Oh my God, 26 days. Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to hear all about that. But first, I know that you're a broadcaster. I know that you are kind of like self made. You did this all yourself, but just tell us what the heck you do for a living.
It's really that's the funny thing is explaining the answer to that question. I need to still get at 42 years old, I still need to get better at that. I consider myself a media professional. That is encompassing everything because I broadcast, I do PA announcing, I do media relations, I write, I do historical research. I do voiceover work. There's a lot of things involving media. I mean, I built this the studio. I mean, obviously the listeners can't see what I'm in, but I built a specific studio that's for all the podcasts. I do a lot of podcast editing, a lot of podcast hosting, so we cross over there. But yeah, I've put out, hosted, edited, and distributed over 3,000 episodes since 2008. So I was a fairly early adopter into the podcast space. So I pretty much cross a lot of different angles and neighborhoods, so to speak, when it comes to where I'm at. But yeah, media professionals. Basically, if there's anything to do with media, I'm involved in. I've done video editing. I've done live streaming. I've been on the back end on all that stuff. So yeah, media professional is how I would kind of describe it.
I love it. Well, one of the first things, when we reconnected and I kind of went over and like did all the stalking and I just hit play on like a video or a podcast, I don't even remember. And once I heard you speak, I was like, I have to bring him on my podcast. Like, you sound so good. Like, is this magical equipment? Is this training? Like, how you sound like, I mean, you are on TV all the time, but like, you
Practice.
sound like you could announce the freaking NCAA game that we just watched.
Yeah, so I have done the actually what's interestingly enough, we talked about this when we ran into each other about a month ago was I actually announced the NCAA championship that you participated in back in
Yes.
2000. So the very first NCAA championship I ever announced was not wrestling, and obviously we haven't dove into the wrestling world yet for the listeners for the first time. But yeah, I've been a PA announcer since I was 14. So I started doing
Wow.
baseball when I was 14. So part of this is knowing how to work the good old podcast, the favorite podcast microphone, the SM7B, which is I didn't start on this thing and I didn't buy a bunch of equipment and then start. I actually started with what I had. Just a couple of mixer here. I had some regular microphones. I had a headset microphone, the Audio Technica BPH1, which I use for broadcasting. And then I've just kind of evolved the gear over the years. So it started out with what I had. And then, there's things to be said about microphone technique, and broadcasting and announcing are two very similar skills, but with very different skill sets behind them. So a lot of this is just practice and being able to make sure that I enunciate clearly, because where I grew up in Poquoson, Virginia, Newport News, Hampton, that the Southeast Virginia region is there's a little bit of an accent with some of that and some of
Yeah.
the twang. You hear. I remember when I was living in Colorado for a bit, and my mom had trying to get a hold of me, and we had just come out of church, and she's like, "Why didn't you answer?" I was like, "Oh, Mom, I was at church." It's just the Southern accent just came out of certain things. I was like, "Well, why do you don't sound like you're from Virginia?" It's like, "Well, how many people are going to hire an announcer who sounds like now wrestling on mat 3, save the Double A state wrestling tournament in Virginia?" But yeah, so it's been a lot of practice. I never really was formally trained, other than my freshman year in high school, took a speech class, which really, really helped. And then just repetition. It's
Mm.
just like anything. It's like if you're in sports, to do the same technique right, you have to do it over and over and over again. And that comes with repetition. So, an extended run in college gave me a pretty good chance to getting a lot of reps. And then, announcing events on the weekends, plenty more reps. So here I am, I said, 20, geez, how many? Math is not my strong point, but, I look back at, I was 14 years old when I first said now batting for the Pocosin Islanders. It's like, that's 28 years ago.
Oh my
What?
gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
So
when you announced things in college, including my game, I didn't know what to look for. I wasn't really paying attention, but now that I'm also, in this podcasting space and entrepreneur space, like I instantly like was like, he's really good.
I just love the name of you. We start talking about it. It's like messy success. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am your avatar. I am a
Yeah.
messy success, I believe. So that's so for the listener again, that is what all led to this was like messy success. You're into podcasting. I'm into podcast. We need to chat here.
Oh my God. Well, that was one of the coolest parts about all of us, coming together was I got to see how many of our graduates like are entrepreneurs or could at least like entertain a conversation around the things that I love to talk about. So yeah, because there's a few of us. There's a few of us.
Yeah, I mean, and what's also crazy is we look back at all the those athletes and people that were around the sports at said school in Norfolk or unsaid school in my case because I'm not really a fan of it where we went to school anymore. But who's look at the teachers, look at the coaches, my roommate was Jeff Rusek. His wife Melissa's been coaching and teaching and doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, just the amount of people that are giving back and we've got firefighters, we've got teachers, we've got police officers, we have people working all sorts of different walks of life. And there's the self-starters, the entrepreneurs, then there's the ones who are in public service. There's so many different ways to go. And looking at at our group of friends back then, it's just really it's one thing being when you live far away now, it's like you don't get to see him nearly as much. It's like, man, what would life be like if I still lived back in Virginia? So it always
I
makes me
know.
scratch my head. Be like, man, what would I be? I mean, because when I go home now, like Timmy Goodale was one of the guys in the wrestling team. He lives like next door to like one of my high school best friends. Like, what he moved to my hometown. Like, how does that happen? How do you like? It was just the connections made. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to definitely reconnect with a lot of people. Sadly, through a tragedy is where how we reconnected. But I mean, we're all connected on Facebook and stuff. But it's one of those things that sometimes those are the things that bring people back together again. And the conversations we've had with some of the roommates that we kind of drifted apart, and now we're all married with kids and have families and such. And it's kind of cool to see where we grew up. But there's always those stories that we've got and be like, man, how some of us, again, messy success. We were messy back then. Now we're somewhat successful. So, and of
Yep.
course, success is also is that's a perspective too. Somebody can be, you know, doesn't have a penny to the name, but they can consider themselves a success because of what they do in this world. And somebody can be, multi-billionaire and they can be a success in this world. So there's a pretty wide perspective on what all that means.
Oh, 100%. My first version of success was actually figuring out how to work less, right? Like I was like, I got to stop making this about revenue and build work around the life that I want to live. And that's how I kind of changed my perspective of what success means, right? And then I was able to take care of the revenue part, but I was like, I got to work less. I can't do this.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird when I was building. So for some backstory, so when I was in college, a lot of people kind of knew what I kind of had a little I don't even want to say it was a side hustle. So
You
for
were you were known for what you do. It was
right.
no side hustle. You
But there
already
was a
had a
side
brand.
note. There was another well, thing is it wasn't just the announcing and WODU and although which was I will say this, there was one weird situation I think that it really dawned on people like, wait a minute, because if you didn't come to the wrestling matches, you really didn't hear me much. And if you weren't listening, nobody's listening to campus radio because they're either at a party or at the game. But when, and I'm not doing a whole lot I did a couple PA events for soccer and field hockey and baseball, but pretty much it was wrestling and then men's and women's basketball on the radio station. I was the sports director for WODU, but it was in my dorm room where I started a website called Matt Talk Online, which was a Virginia high
Mm.
school wrestling thing. And that started as a radio show in Hampton when I was in high school before I even came to ODU.
And this is like
So,
before podcasts were a thing.
right. And here's the thing. I mean, if podcasting was a thing when I was in Virginia, oh my goodness. I mean, what I'm doing now would have been, it started, 1997 when I launched my website in Whitehurst Hall, 440B. Yep. I mean, it was one of those like, yeah, I used to get mad at the soccer players that lived on the second floor for taking the elevator. Like, you're athletes, come on. But yeah, I started a website, on dial-up because at the time we didn't have high-speed
Oh my
internet in the
God.
dorms, and we didn't even have high speed until I don't even think we had when I lived on campus, we never actually had it, which at that time was mind-blowing because we'd go up to JMU and hang out and be like, "Wait, you guys have high-speed internet in your dorm rooms?" I mean, and this is during the Napster craze too. So
Oh,
everybody was
Napster.
trading everything. And Oh man, but so what I was doing in college is, I worked at a newspaper. Some people knew that. And that wasn't just a campus paper. I worked at the Daily Press over in Newport News. So that nightly commute, I'd leave during rush hour when people are leaving Norfolk to go back home or something. So sometimes I'd have to go through one or two tunnels just to go to work. And then I'd get off around 12:30, 1 o'clock. And of course, when you're getting off at 12:30, 1 o'clock and you're not really that motivated to go to school, where do you go? You end up going to said pubs. So I had a couple choices. I was doing this high school wrestling website on the side. And I was announcing tournaments on the weekends, as well as announcing OD home matches, and then building my dinner schedule around home basketball games at the Field House, and then later the TED, which I believe has changed its name since. But there's a lot of things going. And what really got in my way was the school part. I didn't really need it, so I didn't decide until like, I don't know, year 5 when I went back. It's like I might need to get this degree that I've been talking about. So my first 4 years were kind of sketchy, but it was all this extra side stuff. So I always joke that I had 3 things to choose from: beer, book, and website. And I chose the beer and the website typically
Yeah.
because, I mean, I was there to get the degree. I wasn't really there kind of to learn. So that goes back to that training where I had a couple classes at ODU that really were helpful, and some professors that I still speak very highly of, and some that were ball breakers that I really didn't like very much at the time. And ultimately they did teach me some lessons that I learned later in life. But yeah, that was kind of the things that I did. The side hustle became a career. Matt Talk Online was the website. I mean, it was pre-domain name.
Oh my
And then that's
gosh.
what it came back when I started my own thing and relaunched it in 2013, 2014. So yeah, if podcasting would have been a thing, because I have tapes of things I recorded. I remember found an ODU Texas Tech women's basketball game on a cassette
A
that I
cassette
did for,
tape. Oh my
yeah,
God.
because I still have cassettes. I mean, I have stuff from like Two Skinny Jays concerts, bootlegs, and
Two
all
Skinny
the
Jays, I
yeah.
forgot. Oh my gosh. This is like, you said Napster, and we are before MySpace. Like, we're not even at MySpace yet.
Yeah, we're not there to Facebook or MySpace yet. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing. Here's the thing. We always joke about, because I was the only one that really kind of had a digital camera either too.
Me
So
too. Me
in
too. Yeah.
the days of that, this is pre-Facebook, pre-Bad Jocks, because that's one thing. You don't want to end up on Deadspin or Bad Jocks for like, athletes doing crazy things. I will
Hmm.
say this: if the NCAA would have gotten its hands on my picture collection circa 2001, 2000, anywhere from '01 to '03, the whole school would have been shut down. I mean,
Oh my
we had
God.
and thing is, it was nothing. I mean, there's nothing illegal. It's just college kids having a good time, but we actually documented it. And it was one of those things where when Dennis passed, we were looking through pictures and we're in a group chat and they're like trying to find that hard drive. And I had to open up a computer that was like 14 years old to get it to work.
Hmm.
And it was like, man, and it's like, hey man, careful with that hard drive. That thing's probably still drunk. I was like, yeah, that hard drive is probably still drunk. But
Oh
we had a
my
good
gosh.
time. It was good, harmless fun. So, I mean, it's one of those things that we go back in time and we look at what works and what doesn't work and what things we learned. I mean, we just had so much fun back then. But
Oh my
yeah, a lot of
gosh.
that stuff during the fun, I was actually doing work. But back to what I was actually saying, I think I got off track. But it was I can't remember whose birthday it was. Might have been, I think it was Rachel Dalbert's birthday. She was on the field hockey team. And we went over to their house, their apartment, and because it started snowing. And
Mm.
we knew we were going to be off the next day because when it snowed in Hampton Roads,
Everything shuts
everything
down.
everything shut down. So it was, I think it was my last year, and I'd done a TV game earlier that afternoon. I'd done George Mason and ODU women's basketball, and it was on TV. And it was the second TV game I'd ever done. I'd done a Comcast game as the sideline reporter for the CAA game of the week with the Drexel game at the TED. And I was the first one to ever do that. And I know I actually got featured in NCAA News for it. But later that month, they gave me a live game. I had no color commentator. I was just me and play by play on WHRO, and it was a tape delayed game. So we go over to the party later, and the game is on TV, and people are realizing that that's me on the TV, and I'm sitting right next to them, and they're like, "Wait, Twinkie, that's you?" It's like, wait a minute. This is some bizarre world. I'm sitting there, I'm hearing your voice on TV, but you're sitting here like drinking a beer next to it. That was one of the things where I think the rest of campus really got to, whoa, wait a minute. It's
Yeah.
not just the loud wrestling guy with the beer bongs.
Oh my gosh. I know. And I mean, we were so young and you were kind of ahead of us with this whole technology, first of all, this entrepreneurial spirit. Like it was always in me, but I hadn't accessed any of that yet. I mean, I was just like, a very social field hockey player. I cared very little about my studies. I loved art, but, and that's what I majored in, but I was there for the experience. And I didn't realize then, but I look back now and I'm like, gosh, like Twinkie was light years ahead
That's
of
my
us.
nickname in case you haven't figured it out, yeah. That's a name I
Yeah.
got in the 8th grade too because I hate Twinkies.
Is that really where it
I
comes from? That's
hate
it? You just hate
Twinkies.
Twinkies?
I cannot stand to this day, I think I ate one I can't remember the last time I actually had one. Yeah, actually I can because I was the grand marshal of the Virginia Duels one year, and Zach Winfrey, who wrestled at James Madison, was a coach at Chantilly in Northern Virginia. I covered him in high school. He wrestled at Denby. So it's like one of these kids that I cover because I wasn't much older than these guys when I was working at the newspaper and doing the website. And then he sees me in the back, shakes my hand, reaches out, and gives me a Twinkie. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So and the thing is by the time I was in 10th grade, I kind of said, "All right, I'm owning it."
Yeah.
Doing the stats. Our girls basketball was in the fall for the small schools back then in Virginia. It was like I remember Jessica DeWitt, who was 2 years ahead of me. She was a senior. I was a sophomore. She goes, "Hey, boy." Who are you? And I'm sitting there. This is the school year hadn't actually started yet, so it's like August 20 something. The girls' basketball season has started. I was like, I'll do the stat. I had to quit playing football because of some family things. So I was like, let me find something that keeps me around sports. And girls' basketball was there. All right. I talked to coach. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a manager. I'm not washing towels. I'm not the manager. I'm the stat guy, and I'll announce. And that was what it was. So I had my stats, and then we're sitting there ready to go to a tournament. I think it was at Nansman Suffolk Academy. And Jessica DeWitt, who's class 95, I'm class 97. Hey boy. And I'm like, my name's Jason, but everybody kind of calls me Twinkie. So it was just like, all right.
You owned it.
Yeah, I owned it. And some people my freshman year took they created every snack cake cream filled joke you can think of. And I wasn't the smallest guy by any stretch of the imagination. So it kind of brought up on myself in some regard, but I'm into some self-deprecating humor. But I mean, in college, I had roommates that didn't know my real name. Like
Oh,
we had
I
one
don't
guy,
know. I
like,
definitely didn't really I knew it, but I didn't really know it. I mean, you were Twinkie and you were
yeah,
like
it was in the
iconic.
paper. That was the byline. I mean, my
Yes.
name it was like Jason Twinkie Bryant in the bylines, and like on the picks of the week, it said like Twinkie. I mean, it was just I'd walk around campus. I mean, I'd go weeks without hearing my name
Oh
on
yeah,
campus.
of
My
course.
mom called the house one time when I lived across from Whitehurst year 3, and George Sable was on the team. He was a New Yorker. Phone rings. Oh, we have home phones. This is also pre
Home
MySpace
phones.
home phones. I can't remember the number of that one, but I do remember the number of the 12 house. He picks up the phone. Hello, no Jason here. Hangs up the phone.
No
Phone is
Jason here.
still in his hand. It rings again. My mom goes. It's like, hello, hold on. Like, George, you just hung up on my mom. Like, your name's Jason. Where's my mail been going, dude?
Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
yeah.
That could be a TV show. Like I'm sitting at my husband and I just rewatched or I watched for the first time Seinfeld. Talk about like the 90s and it's like about nothing, but I feel like your story is interesting enough that you could have a TV show about Twinkie and nothing.
You could you could have a story about that house. I mean, that year, this was before you got on campus, and it was we were on the corner house on Canova, right across from Whitehurst, and it was like, that was like our roof jamming house. We told a lot of those stories not about a month ago, but it was one of the things where it's like, okay, like, oh, I wasn't supposed to be living there, and the landlord was coming over, was like, and I'd be in the back room and I'd sleep till like 4 in the afternoon. It was
Oh my
bad
gosh,
because I'd
yeah.
stay up with George watching him play Final Fantasy, and I'm not a video game guy at the time, and it was like a PS1, and he's playing these weird video games, and I'm just like sitting there, just like, all right, it's bad when you're staying up in the morning and you turn on the radio. Yeah, radio, another throwback.
Radio, yep.
And Tommy and Rumble from FM 99's morning show is coming on, and they come on at 5:30 in the morning. So not a whole lot of productivity in that house. A lot of stories there. A lot of interesting stories about back when we all used to dip tobacco, which is a gross, disgusting habit. But trying to see how much money we could scrape together for a can of chew. I mean, just like it just the. I was living with a bunch of poor college athletes. I mean, we think hear about all this NIL stuff and all the all the money these athletes are getting. I was like, live with a mid-major wrestling team for 4 years,
There you
and
go.
you get creative on certain things you do with coffee filters. I'm just going to leave it there.
Oh my
So,
god.
I mean, you could definitely do a story about some of this stuff, and or our TV show. I mean, but again, it's those life, not just life lessons about how not to save your money, or All right, how much ramen can we get? Or, I like craft beer now. It used to be, I got $20. How many beers can you get? Now it's like, okay, we can go out and have a couple. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like so different. But yeah, I mean, I look back at the school that I, now loathe, but the stories and the friends and the people that were there, those are memories that are great. And then just again to see where we all ended up and who married who and who didn't marry who, and then wait a minute, and then maybe last time I drove around campus, I'm like, where did all these houses come from?
Oh, it
You
looks
know,
so different. Yeah.
yeah.
And I haven't even been in a couple years, but okay, so let's get back on track a little bit.
Because
And
we were never going to stay on track.
oh, I know. I know.
But
I'm
all this
like,
does feed into the abnormality that is the Matt Talk Podcast Network, for example.
no, I love it. And that's why the first thing I said is I was like, I don't have a script. I know we're going to have a great conversation and my people are going to love you, but if you had to think of like one moment that was like your big break, is there anything that you can think of, no matter how far back or how recent, that you're like, this is when everything kind of changed? Even though I guess you were never really struggling, but if there was a turning point or a big break, like what would that look like?
I think some of it is okay. There's a couple of them. There's a couple life lessons here. The first big break, obviously, was getting the opportunity to announce high school baseball, ninth grade. My high school baseball coach slash PE teacher, George Yeager, I believe he's now the assistant principal at Pocosin High School, still there. Played football, Virginia Tech. Great guy. And he kind of, I was kind of that mouthy freshman who was trying to be the class clown, but couldn't quite pull it off. Like, I would say something funny, but the funnier, more popular kid would repeat it, and he would get all the laughs.
Oh
And
man, he got all the
yeah,
credit.
yeah, I was, yeah, credit your content. Actually, I got that. I got a sticker here. You can't be able to say credit. It says wrestling content creators. Credit content creators. That goes back to ninth grade class clowns. You give
Oh
the
my
kid that
god.
came up with the joke the credit. So there was that, and then Scott Canada got me announcing boys soccer, and then by the time I was a senior, I was announcing 8 sports. Well, decided to stay close to home, and then I really think that the Field Hockey National Championship in 2000 was a really good break. I didn't get paid squat for it, really. I think I got $75 to announce a national championship from the
God,
NCAA, Division One.
that's women's sports for you. And we were the
That's
best.
yes, but thing is, that's not women's sports. That's just the NCAA. Actually, that's that particular campus because
Yeah.
I actually offered a couple years ago. Side note, I offered them when they hosted the Final Four a couple years ago. I said, "Hey, I mean, I've been following. I mean, I can't say I'm a gung ho field hockey guy like I am with wrestling, but I still follow enough field hockey, and I'm knowledgeable about the sport. I mean, I'm my friend Carol Entz works for the Big Ten Network. I mean, she was huge into field hockey, and then I just having watched Beth Anders and then seeing all your teammates go coach in college and stuff like, I got people that say, hey, yeah, this girl went to ODU. She's our field hockey coach now. And it's the artist formerly known as Janelle Engel, who is close to where I lived in Pennsylvania. But that side note is getting that one, and it didn't pay much. It's like, okay, I've got an NCAA championship. Then I started announcing again. And it was probably, I moved to Pennsylvania to work for the National Wrestling Coaches Association, which is, they ran a website called Intermat, which still is in existence. I ran it from '05 to '08. Well, Franklin Marshall College is a Division III school that has a Division I wrestling team. They're the only school like it in the country. Very similar to how Johns Hopkins has Division I lacrosse, or a lot of these small colleges that have Division I ice hockey. Well, the EIWA Wrestling Championships were going to be hosted at F&M, which is at the time the last place team in the conference, the smallest school with a Division I wrestling team, and a very tiny gym. And I was like, I got to announce it. So that's really the first time a lot of people saw me at a college level, because I'd been announcing high school wrestling, since the 90s. And I'm in, here it is 2008. I'm announcing a major college conference championship. And it was like, okay, oh, wow. People are like, oh, wow, JB, I didn't realize that was you. I didn't know you did that. And I was like, yeah, I've been doing this for 14 years at this point.
Hmm.
And then I leave that job and I go to Colorado, to Minnesota out here, which is, there's a side break in that one. The story to come to Minnesota was Jay Robinson, the head coach at the University of Minnesota, was starting a college wrestling type of show called Wrestling 411. It's kind of like a sports center for college wrestling. It was a startup. We tanked. It was like the money was basically gone by the time me and my coworker Kyle Klingman got there, and we just kind of limped through the year making it work. And that's where my first podcast started.
And that's
But
what brought you to Minnesota.
that's what brought me to Minnesota. Yeah, it was the job, to the dangling the TV carrot in front of me. And
Yeah, yeah.
when people are recruiting, they tell you what you want to hear, and it was a significant pay raise. It was a good wrestling area. It was a chance to be on TV and to write a show and to be part of the talent. And that tank. So that was like one turning point, but it was a gut check personally because by that time my ego was kind of getting out of control. I was like, I'm the internet guy. I'm the badass. I'm doing all this. Everybody likes to hear, it's like because I had all the information. I was hustling, but at the same point, I let it go to my head a little bit. And then when that job tanked, I'm like, oh, and then seeing what who took over to the site didn't matter. They weren't
Mhm.
following me. They were just saying, oh well, that was a good site. We're going to stay with the good site. That
Mhm.
site's reputation still actually carries on. I mean, it's got better leadership than it did. There was a little lull in it when I took it over, and then there was a lull for a bit. But now I think it's on the way back. But that that death of that startup kind of was a gut check. Then I moved to USA Wrestling in Colorado, and during that time, Drew Periano is the head coach at Northwestern, and Matt Storniolo's assistant. And Storniolo is now the head coach. They run this big tournament called the Midlands, which is in the Chicagoland area. It was actually at Northwestern for quite a while, and that was a big Midwestern tournament right before New Year's, and I started announcing that with one of the legends of sports, Sandy Stevens, who's still announcing tournaments, and yeah, I will not say her age, but she's been doing it for multiple decades, multiple, yeah, a lot of decades, a long time. Let's just say she started announcing the NCAA championships in the 1970s. So
Oh my goodness.
I started announcing that, and that's when the Midwestern crowd starts to hear me. So I think it was the opportunity to announce two major college tournaments, and then another turning point was the gut check that, oh my gosh, I no matter what, everything I mean, I was usually doing pretty well. I did well at the Daily Press, did well with my own stuff, but it's like knowing that I had no control over the success, even though no matter how hard I worked, I just,
It
there's a
sounds
sales
like you
there was a
realized
sales component to it that
you
I'm
were
not a
always
sales guy.
attached. Like you were
Yeah.
always attached to another brand. So it sounds like you kind of realized like I need to be independent of my own brand so that
Well,
people know me as Jason Bryant, not attached
part of
to.
that too, but no, the thing is, in Virginia, I was known as the Matt Talk guy because
Mhm.
the Matt Talk online was the thing. So when I left to go to the NWCA in 2005, that kind of went away. I became the Intermat guy. Well, Intermat had
Mm.
been around since '95, so it was just another name. And then USA Wrestling, I'm working for USA Wrestling, and then there's a situation where, and if your listeners haven't figured this out now, I'm huge into the sport of wrestling. So whether it's college and
We're
Olympic
getting
level
it. We're getting
wrestling,
it.
yeah. So I've realized I actually did some numbers. I've actually covered or announced 48 national college wrestling championships across Division I, Division II, Division III, the NAIA, the junior colleges, and I've had 26 international trips covering wrestling. So I'm pretty big into it. But so we go back to the gut check type of stuff, and then say,
And you
oh
came
man.
back to Minnesota. So how'd you end up back in Minnesota?
Well, when I was here the first time, I met a woman named Abby, who's now my wife, and we
Okay,
have
I thought that
two
might play a part.
two wonderful daughters. Yeah, and I'm also an eHarmony success story because
Oh, nice.
if you, yeah, like I go back and look at some of those college pictures, and even some of those pictures of me in my 20s. I'm like, who dressed me? Like, really,
That was
really,
the 90s,
who
Twinkie. That was the
dressed me?
90s.
Who thought it was cool to like,
Early
oh yeah,
2000s.
hey, girls are gonna like it when you're bonging 4 beers a night and smoking a pack of cigarettes. No,
And
nothing about
carpenter
that is
jeans.
attractive.
Carpenter jeans.
Oh, don't even get me started on my baggy jeans. Jeez. I was also pretty. I don't want to say. I wasn't like because beards weren't really a huge thing back then. You got the giant beard
Yeah, beards are
thing
in.
now.
I've always liked beards, but yes, beards are definitely a thing
I
now.
had a goatee, but I didn't really know how to like what I thought looked cool. No, nobody wants. You're not. I looked like a roadie from one of these freaking metal bands or something. At one point I had braids that were, my freshman year I had long hair down past my ears, and it was braided like the dude from The Offspring. So, anyway, so I met my wife here, and then we left to go to Colorado because USA Wrestling, which is a group I had worked with as a freelancer for a long time. I had a job open up. They kind of tailored it to my skill set. And then I worked there for 3 years. And then when Lucy, our oldest daughter, was born, she had some medical issues that were, at 9.5, almost 10 years old. She's still, she's still got some things that she has to get through. But ultimately we felt like if my job was going to be traveling in the sport of wrestling, whether it was going to be, we were figure it'd be okay being near Abby's family because she went to college here. Her sisters are close or relatively close. I mean, they're within a drive. I mean, my parents are, my mom, my dad since passed away, but my family's 1,200 miles away. It's not like hey,
Hmm.
can you babysit the kids this weekend? We got to go somewhere. So we came back, and during that time, I got picked up by a group called Amateur Wrestling News that was merging with another website, and I was basically back to kind of doing what I knew how to do, is run wrestling websites and generate content and organize and curate. And that, another bad business decision. This is where the messy part comes in, to the messy
Okay.
success. So there's two bad business decisions that I made, and both involved moving to Minnesota. And both of them I came out on my feet, because when the Open Mat and Amateur Wrestling News kind of tanked,
Did they both involve working for somebody else too?
I was the sweat equity guy.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
two owners are arguing on how to pay me. Well, he's doing more on the website than he is the magazine. And that was 18 months of who is freaking paying my check. Now, I took a pay cut because I was going to work from home. And this is way before COVID. So working from home was like kind of a foreign concept a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in an area with a major metropolitan airport, had a Big Ten school, had really good Division II and Division III wrestling, really good high school wrestling scene here, driving distance down to Iowa, because Iowa State were really good, over to Wisconsin. I mean, I'm in Big Ten country. Midwest wrestling is really good. So I thought the opportunity was there. And then ultimately, people, I said, why don't you do your own thing? Why don't you do your own thing? It's like, I don't want to really compete with myself, because I'd brought 3 wrestling organizations, media, world up to snuff. So I'm like, do I have to compete with myself, essentially?
Mm-hmm.
And then during the time at USA Wrestling, I'd started another podcast. I'm like, you know what? I was driving to a tournament in Wisconsin, and I heard the Iowa coaches show, or college football radio. And I heard like the Auburn coaches show, the LSU coaches show, and the Oregon coaches show for college football. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wrestling can do this. I can do this for wrestling. And that was where Matt Talk Online was reborn, is as a podcast production company where I would host it. It started out with a bunch of clients. Now I've got one full service client, and now a lot of different a la carte type of clients where I do a lot more production. Some people are on the network. Some shows I actually host and edit and distribute and do all that stuff. So ultimately, Matt Talk Online came back in a very, very different form. And the funny thing is how to come up with the name. It's like, what do I do? I was looking at wrestlingpodcast.com or something like that, because I was gung-ho in the podcast space, going to the convention, going to New Media Expo. Still never been a podcast movement, though. Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
Something usually happens with that. Act of God, COVID, birth of a child, Olympic Games, things like that. But so all of those things factored in. So that's another break, is when I had the epiphany to bring back my website. Because what do I do? Because the guy that wanted the domain wanted to charge $10,000 for it. I don't really want to sell it, but at $10,000. Like, all right, so let me take a shot in the dark, see if matttalkonline.com is back, because it got taken from me from a while, renewal issue. And sure enough, it was available, and boom, Matt Talk Online was back. So that's a lot of gut checks and a lot of turning points.
That's awesome, though. And I love that
really,
you realized it because you saw what these other sports were doing and you were like, wrestling can do this too. I mean, I feel like that so many of us have that moment where they see someone else or something else and you're like, I can do that, or I can do that better or different, whatever it is.
Yeah. And here's the thing. And it's one thing that I also didn't do. I didn't get pissy about other people starting wrestling podcasts. I didn't feel ownership over the medium. Matter of fact, I was basically I was helping most people that had started wrestling podcasts. That people would reach out, or I'd kind of reach out unsolicited and be like, "Hey, I noticed something with your audio," or like my guys that have become some of my best friends now with a show called Blood Round. They were actually uploading their entire WAV file and I was like, "Why is this taking so long to download?" And they were just going from the Zoom H5 or H4, whatever they were using to record, and uploading it to then SoundCloud, which I don't recommend, and uploading it. And it was like, why is this 1 gig? And I look at the download file. You're uploading the WAV file. That's where you're running out of space. So, and then that was like episode 6. Now those guys are like episodes 300 and something. So, what's become, there's the podcast stuff, but I've also still tried to help people. Like I will always, I say I have consulting rates, which I never freaking charge anybody
You
for.
should, though. You should.
But here's the thing. It's like, I got ways to generate income through Patreon and through various, the PA announcing, through the, just there's ways that I've cobbled together a pretty decent, decent way to work. And again, that's the one thing with being an entrepreneur, working smarter, not harder. But again, one of those
and
early,
lots of different revenue streams. That's cool. You're on Patreon. It's been on my interest
doing my
list.
taxes sucks. Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
of course.
I don't know. We're doing them right now, and it was to the point now where I think our CPA was like, I can't do this anymore. You guys
Too
are
many.
just but
Messy,
again,
messy.
I've had so many ideas that and so many things that have come my way that just, you know, working things. And I do want to go back to one of the key things. Again, I'm kind of jumping all over the place about, I mean, we've got 20 years to catch up on here.
I know, I know. It's a
Well,
lot. It's a
probably
lot. And I feel like I
18.
got a lot of questions, so we got to get
Yeah.
shorter answers.
So another one was, let's go back to when I'm in that time where I leave USA Wrestling. We move back. We're living with my wife's parents for about 6 months till we buy a house down here in the Twin Cities. And wrestling gets hit with a knockout punch. We are knocked out of the Olympics.
Hmm.
And it was February, it was Valentine's, it was either February 13th or February 14th. I wake up and actually it was Matt Small, one of our guys from ODU,
Mm-hmm.
sends me a text. He goes, WTF, the Olympics, wrestling's out of the Olympics. And I'm like, what in the heck? Did I go look at, I think I go look at Twitter. I looked at my phone and was like, and my eyes just got real big. And it was just this big, I mean, everything got set in motion. We had people from the sport of wrestling from all over the globe working together. And one of those things was putting together the Keep Olympic Wrestling movement. And I ended up doing the broadcast. We ended up saving it. And the first World Championships afterwards, we had changed the rules. The rule set was terrible. It was really, international wrestling was really bad to watch. And I go to Budapest, and I end up being one of the broadcasters doing the web stream. They didn't. This is the first year they had a web stream that was any good. And then they keep moving. And then the U.S. hosts the World Championships in Las Vegas in 2015. And what USA Wrestling did is it made sure, it brought Sandy in, brought me in, Ken Berger, who is a Virginia Beach resident he announced the Olympics in 2012 in London. He had been one of the guys that helped me out and get some gigs. And I've worked with the Virginia Duels with him and road races and such. And A.L. Hazlip, who'd been an announcer. And then they brought Brian Hazard, who I announced the Nationals with now, to do some sidelines. So we basically brought all of our voices in wrestling into Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I'm one of the main PA announcers for the World Championships there, and through that Save Olympic Wrestling movement, I met a guy from Brazil who was on the UWW, was then called FILA, then became United World Wrestling, Pedro Gamofilo, and he was the president of the Brazilian Federation. They're hosting the Olympics. So they say, I said, hey, I'm looking, and at that time I didn't work for USA Wrestling, so I wasn't sure how I was going to get to Rio. And I reached out and said, hey, if you got webcasting, you got anything, I'd love to be involved someday. I had to figure out how to pay my way because when I was at USA Wrestling, they took care of all that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the one thing when you're independent and you're used to being paid to go places, then you have to raise that money to go places. Things get a little different. Like trying to figure out how to get my trip to Uzbekistan paid for at the 2014 World Championships. That was another story entirely. But so through this, and then we have this test event, and they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to bring you down for this test event in January. And I don't know what I'm doing yet. Okay, I'll go down. I think it's a webcast. It's a practice event, an actual event to run through the hoops you'd have to jump through to run a games. They had the march outs, the signs, and all that stuff that works that way. So it was practice. Well, I get down there and I realize they're testing me out to be the PA announcer, and I didn't know this. And my friend was the PA announcer in London, and I was like, am I taking my buddy's job? I didn't know I was doing this. So this is like the day before I go. I'm like, English announcer. Okay, that changes things a little bit. So I went down in January of 16, did the test event for 2.5 days. It was a women's wrestling tournament, and it was a small event. We had a couple mats, and it was very sterile because the Olympics are sterile. And then got down, and a couple months later, like, hey, we're choosing you to do the Olympics. I'm like, yes.
That's
So
awesome.
it was hectic because I was working with two people that weren't professionals. One was the French speaker, and then one was the Portuguese speaker, because in Brazil they speak Portuguese. And it was a rough 9 days. But I was down there for 2 weeks, but it was the days of competition was kind of, I mean, I definitely earned my money there. But then from there, that meant Paris. I got the Worlds in Paris. Then I got them in Budapest. Then I got them in Nur Sultan. Then I got the Olympics in Tokyo. Then I got the Worlds in Oslo. So now I'm basically, I've done the World Championships or Olympics every year since 2015. I've done the NCAA Championship, Division I championships. That was a huge opportunity since 2016. I mean, I've announced every college let's see, D1, D3 in the NAIA since 2016. Every World or Olympic Championship since 2015. So that Olympic turning point really was huge. Vegas was really huge. So There's a
So
lot of
if
people to thank
if you
involved
were
with that.
looking at like, resumes or accolades in the world of announcing wrestling, does anybody have you beat?
Well, the older people. There are people
Yeah.
that were there before. The late Ed Aliverti was a guy who I first discovered when he was announcing the Virginia Duels, which is the big college and high school wrestling tournament at the Hampton Coliseum every January, which I've been to. I think I've missed 3 since '95. This year I missed it because I had COVID, and he was very he was an entertainer. He was a music teacher in Washington, started announcing in like the 50s. And then he announced, I think, through 2001. He passed away, I think I want to say 2011. But he'd come to the Virginia Duels and he was just so poetic. And we
Yeah.
have vastly different styles. We sound different. There's a couple things that I borrow from Ed. And, you want to say that, who set the bar for announcing? It's Ed Aliverti.
Yeah.
And for a long time, his partner in crime was Sandy Stevens, who I mentioned earlier. She had announced so many things. I think I'm trying to think the amount of the Americans that have announced the Olympics. There's not that many of us. So Ed, Sandy, Don Blasingame, Ken Berger, myself. Um, yeah, I think there's 5 Americans that have ever announced the Olympics.
Yeah, and
So
I would imagine that that pays a little bit better than the 2000 NCAA championship.
feel, yeah, I will say that there. I'll say this too. It's not something I can just do. If I was announcing 100% of the time, one, that's extremely hard because I just did
Yeah.
5 weeks in a row, four tournaments in the NAI is 2 days, the D3 is 2 days, the NCAA D1s is 3 days, and then you go to the European Championships where I just came back from. Those were 8 days. Let's see,
And
8
it's
days of
all day,
competition.
right? Like wrestling tournaments are long.
This was like 11:30 to about 3, and then a break, and then the finals took about 3.5 hours. So,
Yeah.
and then the finals, you have a little different pop. Like during the day, it's like, it's just kind of bout calls. On mat A in the red from Romania, Victor Ciobanu, his opponent. In the blue, it's that stuff. Then we get to the finals, like in the red from Uzbek, all those type of things. Actually, Uzbekistan's not the Europeans, but point is you get a little bit more, you know, snarl, I guess, when it comes to those finals introductions where it's not, I'm not a ring announcer, but it's like you're coming to the mat and my job is to get the fans hyped up,
Yeah.
but not being too over the top. So it's more of a very, very just I want to sound it. I want the wrestler to feel like their intimidating walk is being echoed in a way that's like, this guy sounds like I want to feel right now. It's kind
Yeah.
of, and I tried to do, I remember going back in time when Delaware State and our alma mater had a wrestling team. And I remember the coach at Del State we were at the BC East, and he's telling a story. He's like, man, you ever hear Bryant announce, man? He's sitting there, he's got the music blaring. It's like, it's like, man, I'm getting fired up as a coach. And I look around and there's 20 people here, and it's Delaware State and Old Dominion. It's like
20
weird.
people.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
the
there was
best announcer
nobody.
ever, and we have 20 people.
When I was like that when I was announcing at F&M too. I had F&M home matches, and I joke with some of our friends like, how do you prepare for the Olympics? It's all those packed houses at Mazer Gym in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and the Field House that would pack them in. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's
That's what's so great, though, is that you were showing up for those 20 people, like as if it was the Olympics, right? Like you're bringing that energy.
it's been something, and the thing is, those are those reps. So there are things that I did back then that I don't do anymore. And there's ways that I've learned how to save my voice and ways that I don't need to come out snarling for every single thing. A little bit more breathing from the chest versus breathing from the throat or talk. It's just like on 3, it's just like learning how to use a microphone in podcasting. You start out and you're like, you're way back here and you think you're good. Yeah. And or then you don't eat the microphone. Yeah.
Why do people eat it?
Yeah. So, and I got a couple mics here. I mean, it's just it's trial and error, it's learning. And ultimately, I went from announcing in front of 20 people at a building that no longer exists in Norfolk to, 4 days ago, I'm at the European Championships in Budapest, Hungary, and I've done 2 Olympic games. I've covered 3. I've been to 3. I mean, my daughter's named after Olympic cities, Lucy London, Ruby Rio.
Oh my gosh,
They're
cool.
born in 12 and 16. So our dog is named Hazel Tokyo. I got away from the alliteration there. Plus, we weren't having a third kid. We're in our 40s. We're not, no more of that. So no Tammy Tokyos, no Tanya Tokyos. But yeah, it's been a pretty crazy journey. And then you factor in all the podcast stuff and the historical stuff, the archives. I've kind of shifted from journalist to more historian when it comes to wrestling because I was doing all the breaking news stuff before social media.
Yeah.
or MySpace. I was getting college commitments via MySpace. I remember a kid that committed to University of Pennsylvania is like sends me a MySpace message. Hey man, I'm committing to Penn. Like, all right, that's the first time I'd ever gotten a MySpace. And, there was no Twitter. There was no
Right.
these edits and the graphics, and there's no, top six. I mean, I had a top five for these kids on a premium service ticker because I called their parents, hey, where are their trips? And if they wanted to give them to me, they gave them to me. So,
That's so cool.
the recruiting news has changed so much and just so much. And I look back at the days at the student paper. I think probably the most iconic thing I ever did with the student paper at ODU was the Hurricane edition,
Mm,
which Hurricane Isabel was
yep.
quite interesting. And there's a bunch of us that jumped off the pier behind it. And then the title was What Not to Do During a Hurricane.
Oh my
The
gosh.
names have been changed to protect the guilty. No, that was one of those trips. And
Well, let's
there's
let's talk about like forward a little bit and like dreams. Like what if you could dream up anything, to be next or for your future? Like what are like your big aspirations? Is it wrestling? Is it non-wrestling? I mean, I could hear you on like a true crime podcast or like see you on TV.
Hey, if there's people out there that need some voiceover work, I am all for that. I'm actually working on some stuff with the Hall of Fame. Actually, the next project is on Gray Simons, who was the wrestling coach at ODU when we were there, because he retired in 2004. And what people don't know about Gray Simons was that he was a 7-time college national champion. He won 4 NAIA titles and 3 NCAA titles, was on 2 Olympic teams, and is one of the baddest men to ever walk the planet. But you'd see this, he was 115 pounds, and he was the fastest. He was so fast that the videotapes back then, the 8 millimeter or whatever, the high eights, whatever they were called, or even I don't even think the projectors that you get in the classroom with Ben Stein's voice, like in the Wonder Years. It's like he was faster than some of those videos. So it was like we go back and see. I'm doing a podcast on him, and I'm writing it, producing it, and editing it. So there's that artistic stuff
Mhm.
that I'm building into, and be able to do some more stuff to give back to wrestling that's in wrestling. But it's definitely a story like that will branch out beyond wrestling. I did a series on Little Rock and their foundations, which I would suggest anybody to listen to if you like sports.
You could
It's not
narrate
necessarily a
like
wrestling
30 for
story.
30s and stuff like
Yes,
that.
it's very 30 for 30. It's called getrockedup.com. That's where you can find it. But I'd love to, there's a couple things I want to do, but as far as I'd love to be able to continue, I can branch out. I mean, I have the opportunity. Wrestling's my love, but that doesn't mean I'm not qualified to do other things. I mean, I've done, I was in a movie not that long ago called The
Yeah.
Last Champion, where I played myself. I'm in the credits as myself, and there's a scene of me with Dan Gable and Randy Lewis. Okay, if you don't know wrestling, not that impressive. They're both Olympic champs. Okay, and Cole Hauser from freaking Yellowstone. That guy's huge right now.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I mean, we're in the scene together, and it's like not like I'm in a movie and Cole's also in it. We never saw each other. Like we're in the same scene, repeatedly shooting this thing. So
And how did that fall into your lap? How did that happen?
they needed a broadcaster, and my friends in Texas are like, you need to call JB. He's the
So
best.
you
So
got to play
I
obviously
played
yourself, a
myself
broadcaster as a
in the
broadcaster in
credits.
the movie.
Jason Bryant himself. I have an IMDb listing too. But what things I'd like to do? I mean, I would like to be able to get some different type of I mean, honestly, playing myself in movies or playing a broadcaster movie, that's a role I'd love to do because I can do, I've done 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 sports. I've done roller derby. It's an option. It's one of those things that I'm not in SAG, so it's not like, if they hire people that have a specific skill set that's not an actor, that's where I can kind of check that box. That's kind of
Yeah.
a pipe dream a little bit. It's like, hey, who needs an announcer? Well, everybody, and they usually wing it with that.
Well, any
But
and any like sports movie or sports show, and
hint, hint,
usually the
if
scenes
you're a
aren't that
messy
well done.
success,
So
yeah, if you're a messy success entrepreneur looking to do a film, hey, hit me up.
yeah. And so
But
like
and
voiceover, could that be like other
that,
people's podcast intros? Like I
I've
know
done
some
that. I've got a
yeah.
couple of those. That's also a very saturated market too, because there's a lot of voice actors. Because the podcast boom is one thing. You get all this equipment, and it's like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I'd love to do that. And then I joke that I've hit at the WrestleMania just came on the stuff that's not the wrestling that I do, but I grew up watching it, and I tweeted the other night, and I'm watching like, it'd be really cool to introduce just one match at WrestleMania,
Oh
just to
yeah,
do
just to
that
say you did it.
because there's like wrestlers that have come from the college and Olympic level world that are in there, and I'm like, maybe if those guys just want, hey, let me do one of your matches at WrestleMania, or just put that into a storyline. Just say, hey, here's a guest Olympic announcer or something. I don't know. That would be cool. And then I think the biggest thing that I'm actually going to try to make a push for, and I don't know if I'm giving it away and kind of
You're manifesting it.
I am. I know what I want to do. It's just if I say it, am I basically jinxing it? Am I preventing it from happening because other people are going to want to run and do it now? Um,
No,
but
you're manifesting it. Always
in
say it out loud.
in 2028, we host the Olympics in Los Angeles. I want to be the guy at the opening ceremonies. I
Yes.
want to be the guy that says Albania, and Cote d'Ivoire. I want to be Greece. I want to be that guy.
How do
I,
you get
there's
that? How do you be
I
that guy?
I don't know. That's what I've got. Let's see, what years? I got 6 years to figure that out.
Yeah.
I do know some people that are part of the LA bid, so there's that. And by that time I've probably got Paris again. I haven't talked to them yet, but I announced the Worlds in Paris in 17. That was kind of their dry run for Olympic wrestling when they were making the bid. And the international governing body, they like me now. I'm not as obnoxious as I used to be. I work well with them now, and they've gotten to the point where hey, World Cup, Serbia, Worlds this year. Hey, you in for Serbia? Yeah. World Cup in Iowa. You in? Yep, I've got it. So it's but just to be, I remember that I got the idea when I was watching the Olympic opening ceremonies in 2012 before I left to go because the ceremonies, and then I didn't leave until a couple days later when I was working at USA Wrestling. And I'm watching as like the country's coming through, and I'm like, and I'm listening to the voices. Now I listen to PA announcers, and when I hear people in sports arenas and stuff, like I don't look at it as like, am I better? It's more or less, can I do that? And I
Hmm.
think I can. And so that's probably the best. I mean, in wrestling, I've done the Olympics, I've done the NCAAs, I've done Madison Square Garden. We were supposed to have them here in Minneapolis at US Bank Stadium, but COVID killed it. That would have been 45,000 people. Like,
Yeah.
just I can't think of anything bigger that has a bigger television audience in sports than the opening ceremonies. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, just be like, ladies and gentlemen, the delegation from, Canada, it just, that's,
That would
I
be
can't think
cool.
of anything cooler than that.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
So
Well, I'll help you manifest it.
that's the one thing I think that would be when it comes to PA announcing, that and WrestleMania would probably be two of the bigger ones. In WrestleMania, that's more ring announcing. That's not, there's a difference between what Bruce Buffer does and what I do. If you're a UFC fan, he's like, fighting. I'm not the dressy ring announcer. I'm the guy that's going to give you some intense sound and going to pump you up. But I still kind of, I guess I consider myself a little old school in that regard. But
Yeah.
yeah, that'd
Well,
be
I
what I
mean,
want
I
to
think
do.
like in narrating too, like 30 for 30s or commercials
I
or
would
voice
love to do
acting,
that.
be in the next Disney movie.
My kids would flip out. Like my kids were like kind of cool when the NCAA championships were on a couple weeks ago, and my wife, bless her heart, actually watched it and had it on for the kids. And so, like the ESPN broadcaster Mike Cousins, he goes, and now we leave you the voices of the NCAA tournament. Jason Bryant and Brian Hazard, and it's like there's our names on ESPN, and Lucy, my oldest, is like,
I
Dad,
love
your
it.
name. So
That's so cool.
the
What a
5-year-old
cool job.
was
I
yeah.
just when we reconnected, I was like, I want to hear all about this. I've never actually sat down. I know what broadcasters do, but you do so many things and you kind of always have. And yeah, I'm just really excited we could do this. I know you have a hard stop. Tell everyone, where they can find you, how they can connect with you. We don't have a lot of people in the wrestling world, but definitely entrepreneurs, podcasters, messy successors.
Yeah, and again, like I said, when you said the name of your show, I'm like, I mean, there's no better way to define what I'm doing than it's a messy success because I mean, I went from a baseball field at Pocosin High School in 1994 to the Olympic Games in Tokyo and Rio and to Madison Square Garden for the NCAA championships. Like those are things that it's not sunshine and rainbows. I mean, I had two major business failures along the way. I've not necessarily made the best decisions with how long it took me to get through school. I mean, I was a 7-year undergrad.
Hey,
I
that's
was
all
a
right.
7-year
Yeah, I
undergrad, and
remember.
not one of these athletes that are 7-year COVID athletes. No, I never changed my major. Lord knows how many classes I retook and wasted. If I'd have scheduled my classes, but like when I came back, I made like 117 classes in a row. It's because I started at noon. And so you work nights, you don't start at 8. Come on.
Yeah, yeah.
But just it's all those things that I've done over the years. It has been a messy success. I mean,
Yep.
and so I love the concept of the show. I've listened to several of them since we've reconnected, and it's I love the concept and love the people you have on. So, but if you're at all interested in that, or if you just happen to have an interest in college wrestling, the Olympics, the experience like that, my Twitter's at Jason M. Bryant, and then MadTalkOnline.com is the website. You can also the Twitter at Mad Talk Online is pretty much just news, so I wouldn't follow that for any insight. But I do random wordles, New York Times mini crosswords, random movie quotes, wrestling news, just sports musings at Jason M. Bryant on Twitter. And again, that's the best way to get a hold of me. I am on Instagram at the same thing. Not as prolific there. I'm trying to understand the reels thing.
Yeah.
It's social media. Like I was so far ahead of the game when I started on it, and then I'm now behind the game because the TikTok thing I can't quite grasp.
I
I'm
feel like
getting
you're
into
appropriate for your genre, though, right? Like
Yeah,
Twitter's
I live
super
on Twitter. I
Yeah.
live on Twitter. Facebook is where like, okay, it's links to my podcasts and pictures of my girls.
Yeah.
And that's, trips maybe, okay. I'm like, okay, Instagram, I can post this 10 picture montage. And, I used to take pictures like, I mean, this, I used to take
Yeah.
pictures like crazy. And now like my photo albums on Facebook are very, very small now. Like, okay, here's day one. And then like 6 days later, okay, here's some more.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where you get me. Like I said, I've been broadcasting for 20 some years, announcing even longer. Live in
Well, I
Minnesota.
love
So
it.
if you're in Minnesota, you like craft beer, you like wrestling, podcasting. I'm in the Twin Cities, so I'm easy to find, pretty accessible, and got questions about the tech behind the podcasting too. I mean, I can probably steer you with there's no right way all the time, but there's definitely wrong ways. I'll tell you not don't go the wrong ways. So
Yeah, I know. We didn't even
I
get
know a
to
lot
touch
about
on any of
nothing.
that. I'm due for a new mic. My Blue Yeti has it's on its last leg.
Oh, well, actually, I actually have a Blue Yeti, but it's actually a big Blue Yeti cup.
Oh,
So it's a joke in my podcast
yeah.
masterminds. Like I have a Blue Yeti, and it's an actual drinking cup.
And those are awesome. Probably better than the Yeti mics. It's not bad. I think they're made for looks, you know?
If they're used, there's a proper way to use them, and most
Mm,
most people don't use them correctly.
that
So,
would probably be me.
but
But like
I
you
got
said, you didn't have it
the
all
low
together when you
profile boom
started.
mic here. I got so I even put see with the short. I put the the little sticker from there, and I can have that like in the screen if I needed like oh, hey, you got
Yeah.
this. Wow, that's an interesting place to freeze as we're on
Oh
Zencast.
my
But
God,
here we
but
go.
I could get a messy success sticker and do something like that.
Yeah. So
Cool.
and again, got the studio, got the ring light, got
You're
just a little
fancy.
depth of field.
You're
Trying to these
fancy.
bags under the eyes though. Again, this bad podcasting. Talk about video. It's just like that's another thing too. When you're on TV, is the world of men wearing makeup is a thing.
Yep, it is a thing for sure, for sure. Well,
But
thank you so much, Jason. I am so glad that we got to reconnect, even though it was under the circumstances of losing our dear Dennis. But you're the best, and I really appreciate you joining us.
my pleasure. A lot of fun. And whenever you want me back, let me know because I can talk forever.
I see that. You got it. You got it. All right. Thanks. All right. That was really special. So, this is episode 91 of the Messy Success Podcast. So, I want to make sure you guys know where to go to get all the show notes. I took a picture of Jason's studio because I know we kind of talked about that at the end. And you can go to elizabethhenson.co/E91. And you'll be able to find all the links to connect with Jason. Like he said, he's really easy to find on Twitter, Facebook, and all the places. But he's so talented, and I'm so glad that we got to do this. And thank you, if you're even still here, for going down memory lane with us. I know that you can probably relate to reconnecting with college friends and being able to see someone through a completely different lens, right? Like, I was 18, 19, 20, and 21 when I knew Jason. And I have a totally different level of appreciation for, what he does for a living and what he's passionate about. And, he was just the guy that hung out with the wrestling team. And now, like, I get to see what he's really done with that. So it's very cool. Thank you guys for being here. As always, I really, really appreciate you guys. I appreciate you being part of the Messy Success Podcast. Don't forget, if you're on Facebook, come join our community. It's called the Community Builder. And we can carry on all of these amazing conversations, and I can help you grow a community around your brand. I know Jason would appreciate hearing from you guys as well. I can glad to get you connected to him if you're interested in any of his voiceover or broadcasting work. And you guys are amazing. Keep working hard, keep chasing your dreams, and I'll see you guys soon.